Is it really hell mode if the main character never struggles? I spent a few hours asking myself that question while watching this anime, and now it's your turn to decide. This isn't going to be a review of the entire series. Instead, I want to explain why I think a lot of people who watched the show ended up feeling misled. We were promised a series called Hell Mode, yet what we got was a protagonist who constantly talked about how difficult his life is, despite receiving one of the strongest abilities in his world and having one of the easiest starts I've seen in isekai anime. I'm going to focus on the first three episodes and explain why I believe Alan, the main character, has one of the easiest starts imaginable, which doesn't really fit the premise of Hell Mode. The story begins with the main character as an ordinary gamer who recently beat a game that took him years to complete. He talks about how easy it was for him and how simple the experience felt. He wants something more difficult, something truly challenging. Hell, if you will.
So that's it? I've only been playing this for 3 years and it's already over? Yet another weak-ass game of weak sauce.
He searches online for a game capable of giving him excitement and purpose in his otherwise monotonous life. Eventually, he stumbles across a mysterious website. It asks him to choose a class, each of which are represented by a difficulty represented by stars, ranging 1 to 6. The hero and demon lord classes are rated 5 stars. The main character chooses the most difficult option, Summoner. Then he disappears from Earth and is reborn into another world as a serf named Alan. The first episode covers his reincarnation. He's born into a family of serfs, the lowest social class in the world. He receives a magical book that displays his stats and grants him the ability to summon creatures. His social status doesn't affect anything in his life, but I'll still go over how it works in this world. Serfs sit at the bottom. They give 60% of what they earn to the local baron, who then gives a portion to the king. Above serfs are commoners, who only need to pay taxes each year. A serf can become a commoner in two ways. They can be promoted by a baron or higher rank, or they can pay 10 gold coins per family member. After commoners come the noble classes, barons, viscounts, and finally the royal family. Now here's the important question. Does Alan being born as a serf affect anything in his life in any meaningful way? As mentioned earlier, no. Sure, you can say Cecil mocks him for being a serf, but later Cecil's father promotes Alan's family to being commoner status anyway. The discrimination never creates any lasting consequences. If Alan had been reincarnated as a commoner from the start, almost nothing in the story would have changed. Despite supposedly starting in hell mode, Alan is born into a loving family. His parents care for him and for one another. He grows up with siblings, everyone remains healthy, and he enjoys a stable home environment. Then we reach the appraisal ceremony. At age 5, every child in this world is appraised to determine their talents. These talents influence how quickly they gain experience and what future paths are available to them. For example, Krenna receives the Sword Lord talent, which gives her increased experience gains using swords and means she has the possibility of becoming a hero in the future. Talented individuals, regardless of social classes, are invited to study at the capital. And to his family's shock, all of his stats are rank E, and he has no talent. Ironically, rank E isn't even the lowest rank, but that's besides the point. Later, we learn his true talent is hidden because it's considered too new to be rated.
My stats showing as E rank was probably due to the slower level ups in hell mode. Oh, but they sent an attachment showing just the raw data.
Episode 3 introduces the first real hardship in Alan's life. His father is injured while hunting a boar. Since serfs must provide meat to the baron, and the baron must provide some to the king, it makes more sense to have some commoners to tag along with them so they have more hands. However, during the hunt, Alan's father jumps in front of someone else to protect them from the boar's attack. It is an admirable act. You might expect this to become a defining tragedy. Did he die? Was he permanently crippled? No. He's perfectly fine and back on his feet by the following episodes. So let's get this straight. Let's summarize Alan's current situation. He was born into a loving family, where no one questions his appearance, where they all love each other, and where no one in his family ever gets injured. Everyone around him likes him. Everyone around him adores him for how powerful he is and how he was able to revolutionize all of their hunting strategy. He possesses one of the strongest abilities in his world, and the only reason he wasn't rated for having a talent was because it was too new to give. His greatest hardship amounts to leveling slower than everyone else does. That doesn't really sound like hell mode. The show's justification is simple. Alan only gains 1/100th of the experience earned by normal people, but that's not enough. Slow leveling doesn't create a harsh or desperate environment, especially when everything else in his life works out perfectly. Listen, by the end of the show, Alan is level 30. Does this mean anything? No. We can't see other people's levels, so we have no benchmark. It would be different if we could see other people's levels. If someone had level 30, they were about the same strength as Alan. If someone was level 20, they'd be slightly weaker. If they were level 10, they'd be a lot weaker. But it doesn't mean anything because we don't see anyone's levels. You might be saying, fine, what would you do differently? Well, I'm glad you asked. One of my biggest issues in the show is Alan's appearance. His parents both have light hair and light eyes, while Alan has black hair and black eyes. The anime never explains this. Characters frequently point out that he looks unusual, but nothing ever comes from it. Why not use that difference to create actual tension? Imagine if Alan's father quietly wondered whether his wife had been unfaithful, not because she actually was, but because Alan looks nothing like anyone else in their families, and he looks nothing like his siblings. It would create an emotional conflict. His parents would still love him and love each other, but there would be an uncertainty and unease beneath the surface. As poor serfs, they might suppress those feelings for the sake of keeping the family and village together. That alone would add more weight to his upbringing. Fine, fine, fine. You don't like those ideas and you think Hell Mode should only be related to gameplay mechanics. Alright, then here's some more ideas. Make Alan's status book visible. Instead of it being invisible and only accessible by him, let everyone else see it. It could still record his abilities, his stats, and be used to have a mental map, but having a magical book floating around with mysterious information written inside would force Alan to be cautious. It would also create interesting moments where nobles or knights eventually notice that there's something about him that's unusual. As it stands, the invisible book adds nothing to the story. The book would be easily replaced by a generic status window, and nothing would change. Another change I would make would be to his infinite storage space abilities. Carrying monster cores, supplies, and equipment should be more challenging. Managing resources is part of surviving. Instead, Alan gets an unlimited inventory because, quote, carrying things is too inconvenient for summoners. I'd also change how summoners work. Alan should have to defeat a monster before gaining the ability to summon it. Throughout the story, he encounters several monsters that would be more interesting than the summons he has, but instead his progression is predetermined. He simply acquires creatures, merges them, and upgrades them. There's little sense of discovery. I'd also remove the ability for Alan to gain stat boosts from his summons. Summoners traditionally fight in the back lines. Their strength comes from commanding allies, not becoming a strong warrior themselves. One thing I did like was how he used his summons abilities. For example, he could see through the eyes of his summons, which made them useful for scouting and reconnaissance. It was one of the few summon abilities that he used continuously throughout the series. This also ties into my previous point. If he had needed to fight and earn the loyalty of the summons before gaining their abilities, every skill would have felt way more meaningful, instead of something handed to him for free. Season 2 is already out. We're about to be released by the time this video is, and I hope the series explores more interesting territory during its school arc. For a series called Hell Mode, I'm still waiting for something that's genuinely difficult.
What the? There's a hell mode? Regret is the least of your worries, for you shall be faced with utter despair. Yeah, as if, like I've never heard that before. Bring it.
Hello everyone, please feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you would like. I would genuinely help me out. I want to thank anyone who left comments on my first video. You guys, I read them all and they were all very nice. And now that I'm kind of like a YouTuber now, it's kind of weird because I was scrolling, I was like, oh, I gotta work on my video. So I just want to say thanks again to everyone who's there, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. All right, ciao.